Hello, friends, and welcome back to r/ProRevenge. Today we have 3 brand new stories, starting with one where our OP was confronted by an incompetent employer. But before we begin, don't forget to subscribe to our channel if you're new here and turn on notifications so you don't miss a new video every single day. Here we go. I know what the client really wants. Make the changes. So I do motion graphics for a living. Basically, it's graphic design that's animated for TV, movies, and commercials. In general, there isn't a lot of room for malicious compliance because there is fierce competition between studios. Most of the time, if there is any malicious compliance at all, it's to back off and let the client go to another, cheaper studio on purpose because you know that the other studio is going to F everything up and the client will then be forced to come back to you to fix it. This story's a little different. So I was working at this studio as a freelancer, pitching on a job to do the opening titles for a news channel in Saudi Arabia. So I turned in my designs, and my client absolutely loved them. Seriously, I've been doing this job for almost 20 years and have rarely had a client react so positively. So he wanted to move forward with the animation immediately. He put us into contact with his assistant, who I will now refer to as the ASS, who would be overseeing the next stage of the project. This guy was nice enough, but unfortunately for everyone involved, he was one of those people that just had to have his stamp on everything. So I start animating. Things are going smoothly, then the ASS starts making changes, and not subtle changes. Obviously, we advised against making these changes because the client loved the original design so much, not to mention the fact that to make these changes, I would have to be staying late, as a freelancer meant 1.5 times pay and double pay on weekends, but this guy wasn't having it. He felt that he knew what the client really wanted and told us to do our jobs, make the changes, and that money wasn't an issue. We made the changes. I was working around the clock, didn't leave the studio for 4 days straight at one point, just taking naps on the couch, weekends, everything. I didn't care because I was making crap loads of overtime and weekend pay. 1 week of this was putting almost $10K in my pocket. I explained the situation to my lady, and she was super understanding and would actually come hang out at the studio with me. So anyway, the changes kept coming, redesigned the logo, changed all the colors, removed the techie globe that was the main element in the original designs. In the end, the job took 3 months and looked like a great big pile of steaming crap that ASS thought looked amazing. It was delivery day. We send everything to the ASS, and for the first time, the ASS shows the client. And crap hit the fan so hard we felt it from Saudi Arabia. Long story short, the ASS got fired on the spot, the client squashed the whole thing and wanted to start over from scratch, which meant a whole new round of pitching. Guess who won that pitch too? FML. So I end up working on the same project for another 3 months, only this time it was directly with the client. And our second story. Shot up house is the price for screwing with retirement. Cast of characters. Jim, owner of the property. Betty, his wife. Kirsten, daughter of Jim, me. Tilda, Betty's sister. Larry, Tilda's husband. Sonny, daughter of Tilda and Larry. Larry Jr., Larry and Tilda's son. Mike, Larry and Tilda's son. Backstory. Many years ago, in rural Appalachia in coal country, lived a cluster of families on a holler. Jim and Betty owned a mobile home and had their daughter, Kirsten, with them. This mobile home was 2 bedrooms and 1 bathroom, but it was sufficient enough for shelter. During the mid-1980s, a recession hit Appalachia hard, and Jim found work in another part of the country. In moving, he approached Larry and Tilda to look after the mobile home and collect rent for anyone that wanted to lease the mobile home. A rent amount was agreed to and would be adjusted for inflation and the cost of living for the area. The money was to be deposited into a savings account except for the money needed for necessary repairs and receipts kept. Jim and Betty trusted their siblings with this and moved, trusting that this money would be part of their retirement fund. I was privy to these conversations but did not pay that much attention to them at the time. Shortly after leaving Appalachia, a renter was found, and Jim and Betty were glad to know that something was coming about from the land in their home area. Then Mike moved into the mobile home, and Jim stipulated that the rental agreement did not change, even with his nephew renting the mobile home. After Mike moved out, Sonny moved in and stayed for several years. Betty asked Tilda several times about the rent, knowing Sonny was very unreliable with rent in the past and was assured that between Section 8 and food stamps that the rent was being paid on time, and there were no issues. A few repairs had been done, but the receipts were stored in the safe deposit box where the savings account was. Fast forward a few more years. Sonny finally moves out, and there are a few more renters, and then the taxes are not getting paid. The mobile home will not pass for Section 8 any longer, as we, Jim, Betty, and I, have been told repairs had been made over the years. We find this odd and inquire again to Tilda, who states this was all a misunderstanding. Once again, Betty trusts her sister and is relieved when we get the tax receipt in the mail. This is very important later. Another few years pass and Tilda dies. Jim and Betty attend the funeral, and Betty makes a gesture to assist with some of the expenses. Larry agrees, and Betty requests access to the savings account that should have at least tens of thousands of dollars by this point, not including interest, to only find out it has never existed. All of the paperwork has been fraudulent and/or forged. Remember that tax receipt? Another forgery. Betty refused to fight. She just lost her sister. Still, Jim is livid, as am I. Sonny was always abusive to me, and to find out she'd been living off my parents for free while receiving Section 8 for rent and getting food stamps sent me over the edge on top of the missing retirement funds. Cue revenge. So knowing everything was fraudulent from the beginning, Jim and I attempted legal means to first get revenge on this thief. We were met with walls of red tape, and with states separating us, it was an uphill battle with a slim chance of winning. Plus, the attorney fees would drain any winnings, and then more. First, I put my piece into action against Sonny. I filed claims of fraud against the Section 8 anonymously and SNAP benefits, given that there was absolutely no proof of rent being paid to the homeowner or the custodian. Larry was stupid enough not to write out fraudulent receipt for when his daughter lived there. Next, I filed against Larry for tax evasion and Social Security fraud, since Sonny was claiming to be paying him the rent money via Section 8. This was income. Since he was not claiming this income on his tax forms, he was double-dipping into the Social Security system and avoiding paying taxes. I did the same for the time Mike was paying rent, although he did not claim government benefits, he just paid rent. The next stage was to notify their local church about the shady dealings with family. Their faith is big on lay ministers and credibility. I told anyone and everyone I could from the church directory about what had happened. I even showed the fake tax receipt. The last bit was the most nefarious. After ensuring that Larry was visiting Sonny and the house he owned was empty, a rented car was used. And while Betty drove, Jim used a .22 rifle to shoot holes in the roof, the AC compressor, the garage doors, and anything else that was laying in the yard and not immediately noticeable. We wanted the burn to last, so no windows were shot out or anything evident from the start showed. Aftermath. Sonny is now being investigated for multiple charges of fraud. Her side business has been closed due to the sweeping allegations that money will not be allocated as intended. Her applications for small business loans and COVID funds have been denied. Criminal charges are being whispered about, but I don't think anything will come about with that portion. Larry's been found guilty of overpayment by the Social Security Administration and no longer receives benefits. He now lives with Sonny and no longer has his truck, camper, boat, or ATVs. Unfortunately, once again, criminal charges are not pending. Larry Jr. has moved into the old home that was shot up. The roof has several places where hail or other debris punched through and made it leak. The siding had similar damage. Some of the bullets, and they finally figured out what it was, pierced some of the old PVC plastic plumbing. He spent a fortune fixing the roof, plumbing, and siding where a lot of little holes were. I don't know if he's tried the AC yet, but I'll be delighted to find out if it malfunctions as severely as I hope. And our last story. Management got what they deserved. Worked for a hospital that was going through a culture change. They brought in a management group to help them get in better financial shape, and what was their first recommendation? Cut nursing staff and pay. Within 90 days, we lost 10% of our nurses. We were struggling to legally and safely take care of patients. Meanwhile, the management team and the senior management went on a 2-week trip to the Caribbean, all paid for by the hospital. Flights, food, rooms, alcohol, all of it. I came into work the next morning after discovering that and saw an email saying that 4 nursing jobs I needed filled were denied due to budget costs. I pride myself at being level-headed and rational when I'm angry or frustrated, but that was enough. I know that cutting some of their benefits wasn't going to save the hospital, but you lead by example. I never opened the email, as the info was in the subject line, and I called the local newspaper about 5 minutes later. I set up an interview with a journalist and told him to bring a big notebook. I resigned after making sure that my staff had their vacations approved and their bonuses, if any, were locked in to be paid. I did everything possible to help my unit out, and then I just sort of left. I left the key to my office with my resignation letter in HR. They called and offered to keep me, and I told them it would cost 4 new nurses. I never heard back. Spoke with the reporter 2 or 3 times after that and told him everything. I told them exactly what the community was paying for on a daily basis. He dropped a small story that eventually grabbed some serious attention. I know from some former employees that a lot of people were forced out over that. A few had to stand in court for monetary charges, and one was charged with embezzlement. They were in serious trouble after that, and eventually a bigger entity bought them up. Supposedly, things are doing much better now, and those that wrote it out went through some serious hard times. The funny part was that the new culture program was never implemented. They paid a ton of money for it and never even opened the box. There's a special place in hell for people who profit off of sick people. Hey guys, thank you all for watching the video. I'll see you in the next one.